Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ketogenic Fasting Project. My name is Tom. I'm a carnivore advocate, and I really just want to help get the word out about how changing your diet can help people, particularly people who have, they're overweight, they have type 2 diabetes, they might have autoimmune disease like psoriasis or arthritis like I had. And today I want to talk specifically about measuring levels of things like ketones and blood sugar. I did a video about this maybe a year ago or so, and I thought I could use some improvement. I talked to a couple people online that I communicate with that were interested in a little more information. So that's what today is about. And bear with me because I got to push some buttons here. So what we have here is a picture of ketone test strips where you measure your urine, the ketone level in your urine. Now, this is slightly different than measuring your blood levels. I kind of hate the fact that they get bad mouth sometimes, and I think there's just some misunderstanding. Now, this is the least expensive way to have some idea of whether you have good ketone levels or not. The best way to use them is to urinate into a small container and then dip the tip of the stick. These containers are full of like a paper plastic laminated strip with a reactive agent on the tip, and you dip it in the urine and then it changes color, and you match the color along here where these color bands are. And of course, if you're in this dark area here where it says large, that means that you have a lot of ketones in your urine. And of course, if you're down here at the other end, that means there's just barely any. And then if it doesn't change color, if the little, it looks kind of like a match, right? So it looks like a giant paper match. If it stays this color, the original color, then you don't have ketones in your urine. So why would you want to measure for ketones? Well, people getting on a ketogenic diet want to know how their ketone levels are increasing, and also people who are fasting. So high ketone levels are natural sort of um, reaction to fasting, because your body is now living off its own fat, and one of the fuels it makes from that fat are ketone bodies. And so when you're testing your urine, I believe it's actually uh, acetone that shows up in your urine. So when you're on a ketogenic diet, sometimes what happens is over time you stop releasing ketones in your urine. Your body essentially keeps that fuel instead of letting it spill over. When you're fasting, this tends not to happen. You tend to have ketone levels in your urine all the time. So if you're doing a long fast, if you've depleted the glycogen in your your liver and stuff like that, the stores of it, then your ketone levels will go up because your body will burn off things like glycogen and glucose first, and then it'll start breaking down more and more fat. That's one of the reasons why it's a good way to lose weight. Now, if you're eating a lot of fat, you're not necessarily going to be burning as much fat that you've already stored. So you can overeat on a ketogenic diet just like you can overeat on any diet. There are certain ways that you could kind of bypass a satiety signal with fat. And, one of them is drinking it. Another is making it sweet. And there's probably a few others out there. So definitely, if you want to lose weight on like a keto diet, you want to hold back on the fat bombs and the bulletproof coffee. Sometimes that works really good for people and they don't have any problems. Sometimes it works really good in the beginning and then it tapers off. And sometimes people just overeat, because it can happen, even though the fat satiety signal is probably the strongest of anything. Because they really don't have much of a satiety signal when it comes to carbohydrates or sweet things. We have some when it comes to protein, but it's not near as profound as it is with fat. And so you can overeat lean meat much easier than you can overeat fatty meats or just fat by itself. So, anyways, I've used these Smack Fat ketone urinalysis strips myself. They work good. There's other ones out there. You can buy them on eBay. I'm sure they're on Amazon. Pharmacies supposedly carry them. Seems like every time I go to a pharmacy and ask for them, they're out of them. So that may just be due to the popularity. So, anyways, this is probably the most basic way to check. Now, of course, people who have seizures oftentimes respond very well to being in a state of ketosis. And technically, a state of ketosis or um, nutritional ketosis, it's sometimes called, or clinical ketosis, means you have a blood level of 2.0. That would be beta hydroxybutyrate, is the ketone that we measure in the blood. And when it gets up that high, that means you're not burning glucose or glycogen like you would if you were on a regular diet, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates or sugar. And a lot of people feel better when they're in a state of ketosis. Their mind is clearer, they don't get brain fog, and a lot of things can heal up. So, anyways, let's move on to the next slide here. This is a glucometer. This is a real common one. I'm not sure if it's current. I actually inherited this one from somebody who passed away. As you can see here, it's displaying 95. So this 95 is not a real high glucose level, but it's higher than you'd want it to be if you believe the way I do. You'd like it to be somewhere closer to 80, maybe below. Now, one of the things is measuring blood glucose in the morning is particularly powerful. If you can get up every morning and your blood glucose is 80 or below, maybe it's between 70 and 80. That's typically believed to be a better sign of health. That means your body doesn't need a lot of glucose, which is in your favor because that means you're not needing as much insulin, which can be damaging. It's not that insulin is bad, but too much insulin is damaging for sure. And eventually you become insulin resistant, which means your body has to produce more insulin in order to get the response it needs to move glucose out, out of the blood and into the tissues or cells. So this unit right here, there's a spot over here to insert a test strip, which has already been removed. And this little guy here is a spring-loaded lance. These little purple guys here in the back are like a needle on a plastic base. You put it inside here, and this thing, you cock it, you pull a trigger, and you use it to punch a hole in your finger or your hand or whatever you want to use to draw blood. They usually come in a little black nylon zipper case, and they're usually not that expensive. They could be anywhere from $10 to maybe $40, but you do have to keep buying the test strips, which I'll show you later. Anyways, this is a Precision Extra. This is a ketone meter. It can also measure glucose. You use two different strips, and you put a little blood sample. This is a one that actually has the test strip inserted in it. You can see down here that is actually a blood sample that it's soaked up, and then the meter takes a few seconds to decide, what the level is. In this case, it would be ketone, but it could be glucose. So I record my test results on my calendar app on my phone. This is also another picture of the Precision Extra. It has a backlight on it, which can be handy. I know myself, I I sometimes get up when it's dark and I don't turn the lights on. They also keep records, so you can recall the records that you've stored in here. It'll tell you the time and the date. So, but sometimes I get up early and the sun's not up yet. So if I'm blood testing, I don't want to turn all the lights on and wake somebody else up or whatever. I'm not crazy about bright lights myself. So having the backlight can be handy, or maybe you have a little problem with vision or something. This is what it looks like in its little zipper case. This is a test strip down here. This is, you can see it's a nice reading. The 3.9 is a nice solid ketone reading. This blue and white thing over here on the side is a spring-loaded lance for puncturing your finger. This is a Keto Mojo. This is the newer meter that I'm using. So Keto Mojo is also capable of reading ketone levels, and I'll demonstrate that. This can read ketones and glucose. So you get the strips in these little containers. Usually come 50 in a container. You can see this is what a strip looks like right here. You insert this into the Keto Mojo unit, and it will turn on. So as you can see, I'm putting this in here. It turns on, it checks the strip, stuff like that. And then you want to stab your finger, put a little blood sample right here at the tip, which you can kind of see in the photo over there. So anyways, I'll do that in a second here. So you'll want a container of strips for ketones. I'll write it on the top. This one has a K on it for ketones, and this one says glucose on top. So anyways, that's basically how you use a meter. They tend to be more specific than using the urine test strips. So that's why people prefer it. Here's a picture. The Keto Mojo also has a backlight, so it's easy to use in low light, or if you have a problem with your eyesight. It typically has a bigger display as well. So anyways, real quick, I'm gonna show you how to use one of these. This right here, this is actually the spring-loaded lance that came with the Precision Extra. If I take the cap off, you could see that little thing right there. See if it'll focus. That is a little needle-like object on the end of a plastic plug that fits inside of here. Just comes out. These are replaceable. These are inexpensive. You get quite a few of them usually when you buy a new unit. Most of these meters come with this spring-loaded lance. So basically it goes, you insert it like this into the little holder, put this cap on like that, and then they have adjustments so that for different levels of penetration, I guess. So you could see here it has a little dial, and I know it's not focusing, but there's a number in that window. I don't know if I can get it to focus on there, but you could set it. This one's set at 6, I believe. Yeah, it doesn't really want to focus because I'm too close. But anyways, so you cock this one by pulling back on the back end, and then it has a trigger right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this against my finger. If you can't get blood out of your finger, or you have really thick calluses, then the alternative site is usually like the edge of the hand. So you want to use a different spot every day. Lately I've been testing twice a day and recording my results. Like I said, I put them on my calendar, and then I put them in spreadsheets and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm going to use this thing. I'm going to put this end of the hole in it is where the little needle is going to pop out, and it's going to stick my finger. And I'm going to hopefully get enough blood to do 2 test strips. So I'm going to get these test strips out, get them ready so I don't have to rush. I took one out of each container because one is ketones and one is glucose. So hopefully I'm not going to get some horrible result on camera. Oh, and one of the nice things about the Keto Mojo, you can get this little device here. You plug it into the meter, and it'll download your results via Bluetooth to a wireless device, or presumably some sort of Bluetooth device like your smartphone or your tablet or whatever. It'll download the data for you. So anyways, the Keto Mojo has this port at the top up here where you slide in one of these strips. So I'm just going to kind of position it so it's ready. And you got to put it in basically. I don't know if you'll be able to focus on it, but there's a little circuit contact right there. This little end here is metallic, and there's 3 contacts there. And of course, the other end is meant to absorb blood. That line right in the middle there at that tip is designed to soak up the blood off your finger or wherever you. So I'm just going to position one of those in there. I'm going to take this spring-loaded lance. I'm going to poke this finger, hope that I get enough blood. I had this hand's been reconstructed, so and it's my left hand, so but it's easier to demonstrate this way. So I'm about to hit the trigger, and I'm going to just punch a little hole in my finger like that. I barely felt that. I hope it made a hole. Yeah, so there's a little tiny drop of blood coming out right there. I think you could see that. All right, and then I'm gonna push the strip into the Keto Mojo. You can see the light come on. It's gonna be it's telling me, yeah, it's not gonna focus real well, but there's a little symbol with a drop of blood that tells you it's ready to read the blood. The trick is, and I think I just blew it, to get enough blood on there. I didn't have enough blood on my finger, and it may give me an error. Yeah, it gave me an error. Sorry, blew that. Let's try it again with a glucose. All right, I got a glucose strip here. Yeah, you want to make sure you got enough blood coming out, and every once in a while when you're not paying attention like I'm not right now, you're going to get so I'm putting the strip in the right way, and then the meter comes on. I know you can't really see the screen. It doesn't show up on the camera so well, but it's ready for a blood sample. So I'm putting my finger, the tip of the strip in the and it gives me a reading. It tells me what my glucose is. Sorry, I can't see that. So anyways, that's the basics of it. And of course, it'll store this data, or you could write it down, or like I said, I put it on my calendar. So anyways, that's basically how it's read. Now the Precision Extra, which is the meter I originally started working with, the test strips come in these packages like this, as opposed to a little bottle like that. But the old glucose meter I had, the test strips came in a bottle similar to this, but they're different brand. The test strips are generally not interchangeable. Some of the glucose meters use the same strips, but as far as I know, like the keto meters and a lot of the different glucose meters actually need a specific test strip. So fortunately, you can buy a lot of them for the well-known brands online. You can get them on eBay for good prices. These like this one, these are produced, I believe, by Abbott Labs for the Precision Extra. They have a lot number on the back, and the meter should show you that lot number when you put the strip in. It's like a verification. These meters can go out of calibration. The Keto Mojo, I believe, can be recalibrated or adjusted, but a lot of the other meters can't. All you can do is test them to see if they're out of calibration. In order to do that, you need like with a Precision Extra, you need a calibration test solution. And then you also need a number that comes with the package of these strips. That number will be a reading that you should get when you use the test solution. I think the test solution's like $20, $30 or something like that. I was getting some pretty erratic readings, and that's why I decided to get this Keto Mojo so I could compare. It seems to me that the Keto Mojo is a little more consistent than the other meters, but it's also a newer technology. And Keto Mojo, I don't know if it had come out when I first started this testing. It may have been a new one, but there was a lot more information, a lot of people using the Precision Extra at the time, so I went with that. The Precision Extra ketone strips were notoriously expensive. Like a good price was $4 a piece. But I've been able to buy, like 30, 40, 50, even 100 of them for around $1 a piece. So they can be found for less than $4 a piece. But the nice thing about the Keto Mojo is they try and keep the cost for the ketone strips below $1. And oftentimes, like you buy 50 uh, ketone strips for the Keto Mojo, and or say it's $55, you get 50 test strips for ketones and 50 for glucose. So, anyways, knowing how much the test strips are is probably an important thing to know before you buy a meter if you don't already have one. I paid probably like 15, 20 cents a piece for the test strips for the Precision Extra, or the One Touch Ultra Mini. So the test strips for that one were relatively inexpensive online. Of course, typically you walk into a store and they don't have the ones you need. If you go to a big pharmacy, they may have a dozen different test strips and none of them are the one you need. So it's typically easier to buy them online, buy, 30, 50 at a time, and just order them before you need them. Otherwise, it could be tough to get them. There are stores like Walmart that kind of have a brand that's inexpensive, but I noticed like I went there and looked, and they were out of their own products. So you could get the meter, but there weren't any test strips. So I don't know. You might, if you want to buy them at a pharmacy near you, you might stop and see what they actually carry. So, anyways, let's move on. One of the reasons why you want to check your glucose, if you're new to low carb ketogenic diet, carnivore, you'll probably find like you wake up in the morning and your glucose levels are over 100. Now that's kind of a good time to check, because if you're on a low carb diet and your body's not used to high blood sugar fluctuations, that number will come down. Like I said, my goal is to get mine down to 80. Some mornings mine's at 80. I think yesterday it was at 86 when I woke up. Today it was at 90. So I'm getting down there. But there was a time when it was probably, I think it's gotten, I'll wake up in the morning and be as high as like 110. And now it's down in the range of like 86 to 90 is probably typical. If you measure your blood glucose later in the day, it'll be lower typically, because there's something that's often referred to as the dawn effect. And in the morning, when it's time to wake up and your body's waking up, your body will produce more glucose and cortisol to help you wake up. But what you're trying to do is get the ceiling down on that, and that's a good sign. If you can wake up in the morning and you've got ketone levels of blood levels of 2.0 or greater, and you have a glucose level around 80, maybe 70 to 80, some people say, that's a sign that your body is not demanding a lot of glucose to wake up. The problem with measuring later in the day is that glucose tends to go down and ketone levels tend to rise, especially if you eat some fatty or whatever. So they're also, that's going to fluctuate based on what you ate, how long ago you ate, and how hard you exercise. If you were to check your blood sugar while you're doing sprints or, running or even weightlifting, your blood sugar is going to go up. I mean, it can go up high, it could be 200 or something, but should only stay there while you're exercising really hard. It's just a physiological response where your body's delivering it's delivering fuel that on demand that's going to be used up right then. That's entirely different than you're sitting around doing nothing and your blood sugar is at 200 all the time. That's a bad sign. So, anyways, let's see what else. Oh, yeah, you might get some fluctuations, particularly glucose or meters or glucometers. I believe that they're required to be like 15% accurate, like 95% of the time, or something like that. That's what the law requires in the US. So you can imagine there's some wiggle room. I've seen some crazy numbers that I've talked to other people, and they've seen some crazy numbers. And basically, you just retest. If you get another crazy number and you don't have a history of high blood sugar, test again. Usually the third time's a charm. Sometimes you get this weird kind of high range, and if I got that, I just write all three of them down or average them. And then, if you shouldn't suddenly get high blood sugar if you haven't had it in the past, though, unless you ate something sugary. So, these devices are also designed to measure the glucose or ketones in capillary blood. So, like in your fingers, or like I said, maybe the edge of your hand or something like that. So, one of the things I did is I tested with these meters, and then I didn't have the Keto Mojo yet, but I was a little suspicious of both Precision Extra. I thought maybe it had gone out of calibration, maybe something was wrong with the strips, but the glucose meter gave me even wilder readings sometimes. So I was going to get a bunch of blood work done. Ketones and blood sugar blood glucose were on that test. So I tested right before, and then I went to the lab and got a blood draw, and the laboratory blood draw was much more favorable numbers than the meters were. Now, there was a little bit of a gap in time in between, but probably like a half an hour or something like that. So they probably didn't change that much. But the tests they do when they draw blood, they're drawing blood out of vein, and they're probably more accurate. So that could explain it. It could be an accuracy issue. It could be a time issue. Next time I do a blood draw for something like that, I will do that. I will do that experiment again. So, anyways, keeping your blood sugar low will prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes. People do it every day. If you want to, anybody who understands type 2 diabetes realizes it's an issue of having high blood sugar that causes all kinds of problems. It's a very common problem. And understanding blood glucose is a really powerful tool for people. So I highly recommend that. And then I think measuring blood ketones is really valuable. Now, I've heard some people that I know and like say that they don't think there's any reason to measure ketones, but I don't know that they're really talking about situations like I was recently, it's probably been almost 2 months now. I started the PKD, or the Paleo Ketogenic diet. That is an all meat diet that includes organ meats and very specific amounts of fat. Is like a 2-to-1 fat over protein ratio. And then you're supposed to include liver and brains or bone marrow. And I did it because I had psoriasis, which you can see a little bit on my elbow still. It's basically healed up and just about gone. So that worked out great. A lot of those spots you see, I realize it's not focusing real well, but a lot of those spots that you see are residual from the lesions I had all over the place. There, that shows up a little better. Even this right here, this is basically just a red blotch now. This used to be all, active psoriatic lesions. The skin was constantly flaking off. They would bleed. They itched. They would grow. They would move around. Well, I had one on the back of my hand here. You could see that's all that's left of it is just a little bit of a bump there. But it used to be, I have pictures, and I'll do a whole video on this later. But I used to have a big active lesion right here. So I had them all over. So I went on this PKD diet, and that did the trick. It took me, I'm going to guess it was about 6 weeks, and there was a dramatic change. I mean, it started getting better almost immediately, But measuring my blood glucose and my ketone levels were an integral part of that. And I think they're instrumental in losing weight too. I'm a big fan of fasting, and in fact, some people do really well with intermittent fasting, where they use a compressed eating window. Maybe it's an 8-hour window, which I think is a little big for most people, but it might work for a lot of people. And then the maybe a 4-hour window or 1-hour window. They eat all their food, one meal a day, OMAD. And that could work for some people, but some people, particularly like myself, that carry a lot of body fat for a long time, you may need more time. And I'm currently doing 4-day fasts and then refeeding with a small, like 500 to 600 calorie refeed, and then fasting again. And so I track my glucose and my ketone levels to see what's going on. The only thing that really seems to influence them is activity level. Now, these are both fuels, so as much as your body can respond by providing more fuel, uh, your levels can also go up based on demand, but they can go down based on consumption as well. So it's something good to keep an eye on. And like I said, checking that morning glucose when you're waking up tends to be a sign of health. So the longer you're on a PKD diet or the longer you fast, the better those numbers get. So if you wake up every morning, you got a glucose of 110, it won't take you but a few days of fasting, and it'll probably come down to like 90. And then pretty soon it'll come down to 85 and then probably 75. At the same time, your blood glucose might start out at 0.1, and before long you're at 1, and then you're at 2, and then you're at 3.9 or whatever, and you'll feel the difference. So for a lot of people, having low blood glucose and high ketone levels is where they heal best. I also seem to perform best like that. And it's easiest for me to do that incorporating fasting. I did pretty good with PKD, but I really got on PKD to get rid of the psoriasis. The weight loss was happening, but I knew I could do it faster I could lose body fat faster by fasting. So that's been my goal. So anyways, I'm very grateful for the help from Paleo Medicina with the PKD diet, and I don't believe they recommend any form of fasting. I was basically doing OMAD because I was down to eating such a small amount of food, and then it went from 2 meals that I ate in about a 2 or 3 hour window, and then I went down to basically one meal. So that in a way that's an OMAD sort of fast anyways. You're basically fasting like 23 hours a day at that point. But and it was helping, and my weight was dropping. I think I lost somewhere around 13 or 14 pounds in roughly 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months on the PKD diet. So it can work for that too. But I'd already been doing a lot of experimenting with fasting, and I'll talk about that more in another video. And I hadn't been fasting for a while, and not long fast, so I was eager to get back to it. But that's another reason why knowing your blood levels can be a helpful tool, especially if you want to make adjustments. I mean, maybe you're relatively lean already, and you only want to fast for 48 hours. Or maybe 96, or maybe you can go longer and you feel great. So anyways, you can learn about that if you don't mind some foul-mouthed language and a lot of over-the-top motivation. You can check out Cole Robertson on the Snake Diet. The Snake Diet's kind of his brand, and he's kind of edgy and all that, but he's got a lot of successful people that he's helped, so you can find him on YouTube. You can find him on Facebook, and I believe he has a website. I think it's just snakediet.com or something like that. So if you want a long-term fasting strategy, there's a lot of advice there for that. So I kind of wish people weren't as afraid of fasting. I wish they weren't afraid of eating fat. I wish they weren't afraid of eating meat, and I wish they weren't afraid of checking their glucose. Glucose can be a really powerful tool, understanding that. I mean, this world, I think it was all the way back in like 2004, the World Health Organization said that obesity was a worldwide epidemic. And now we hear that, obesity and diabetes or metabolic disease, metabolic disorder, metabolic syndrome. People blame it on the Western diet or whatever, but it really has to do with eating refined carbohydrates or sugar. And we've all been brainwashed to think that we're supposed to eat grains and lots of fruit and vegetables and we're going to be healthy, and it's just not the case. So understanding your blood glucose and glycation and central adiposity and all that is really important. There's lots of good information out there. And one of the ways you could start is by measuring your blood glucose levels, see what they're like, and then learning to control them. It's very empowering, and I highly recommend it. So anyways, if you have any questions or comments for my video, feel free to leave some comments. I usually get to them pretty quick. And if you would, give the video a like, subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications. If you watch YouTube, you probably heard that before, but it really helps. And if you can, send the link on to somebody who might get some real help from a video like this. And if you have any questions or, I need to clarify something, feel free to let me know. If you want to read studies, articles, and videos, go to carnivoreinfo.com. Carnivoreinfo.com is basically a place where I post links, and they're filed by category. It's sort of conversational style. If you're interested in autism and carnivore, I have a Facebook group called Autistic Carnivores. I also have another one called the Ketogenic Fasting Project, and carnivores beating autoimmune disease. And so anyways, there's lots of Facebook groups. I have several myself that are kind of niche groups, and there's lots of other ones out there. So anyways, thanks for watching. Please pass the links to my videos on to people that can help, and please watch my videos.